Good morning. Twelve. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. I'm just letting people in the room.
Okay.
Don't know how many are expected. Does anybody know that by chance?
No, we don't. Hi,
Okay.
I'm Stacy. I'm moderating the discussion.
Hi, Stacy. I'm Dell.
We're just going to wait. Hi, everybody. We're going to wait till 10 o'clock until everyone is here. And but in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm trying to see if all of our presenters are here. I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Is Ed on the line yet? Not yet. So he should be here any minute. If you're just joining us, we will be starting at 10 o'clock, maybe 10:01, give a few more people a chance to get here. And also, Chuck, do you have Ed's cell? Can you text him? He was texting me, he was emailing me about getting into the meeting. And
Yeah, I don't think I have a cell, but just his email, to be honest.
Yeah, all right, I emailed him, so hopefully he'll get that and join us any minute. And Dell, if you wouldn't mind making me a co-host, that would be really helpful. Thank you. There's Ed. Ed, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with us. All of our presenters are here. We will still wait another couple of minutes because we want to make sure everyone who wants to come in can come in. And Sigus, thank you for complimenting me on my purple walls. You know, I painted them just for PACAC. That's not true. This was my children's room when they were young. I'm going to fix my lighting. I'll be right back. People are still entering the session at a pretty fast clip, so we're going to wait a couple more minutes. If you're just joining us, thank you so much for coming today. This is NACAC's Code of Ethics and a Global Pandemic. What now? We're going to start in just a minute, but our waiting room is still letting people in at a good clip. So I just would like to make sure we get everybody in before we really begin. It's nice to see all of you here today. A lot of familiar faces. Chuck, I noticed that you still have your happy hour tag from yesterday in your name.
PACAC is a 24-hour happy hour.
There we go. You could just keep it there. All right. Well, I do want to start as on time as possible because we have a lot to do today. So the waiting room, we are still admitting people, but I will let our co-host Dell handle that, handle the waiting room. Thank you so much to Dell and to Revolution Prep for hosting us. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
This has been great. So we have a really amazing panel today. And let me introduce them. Chuck Bachman is the Senior Associate Director of Admission at Lafayette College. Craig Grooms is the Executive Director for Strategic Initiatives and Planning at the University of Pittsburgh. Nicole Focaretto is the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Washington and Jefferson College. Ed Wright is the Vice President for Enrollment at Lebanon Valley College. And Antonio Moore is the Director of Multicultural Outreach, Undergraduate Admission at Penn State University Park. This is a really amazing panel, and you'll notice that we have people from the eastern part of the state, from the western part of the state. We have big colleges, we have small colleges, we have private colleges, we have public colleges. So I think this is the perfect panel to be able to discuss what's happening in our state. I wanted to start with a few things. The first thing is to ask participants to put any questions that you have for this panel into the chat. I will be monitoring the chat and I will be incorporating your questions into the questions we ask the panelists. You can either put them in the chat to everyone or you can put them in the chat privately to me. Either way, I will get it and I will try to get to all of your questions. I also wanted to give you a very quick update from the National AP Committee. This session was originally called NACAC's Code of Ethics and the Moratorium, What Now? But the global pandemic seems to have superseded the moratorium. But I do want to give you a quick update. The admissions practices, the National Admissions Practices Committee has completed a first draft of a new document, which is tentatively called NACAC's Guide to Ethical Admission Practice. This document has been reviewed by the affiliate AP chairs, and it's currently being reviewed by the board. I actually think they just finished. We are expecting to release a draft for member comment soon. Potentially as soon as the end of this week or early next week. And we will present that to the Assembly in September. The biggest change is that the document is now a best practices document with no monitoring and compliance section. We will need to re-envision the role of admissions practices to emphasize values and to provide education to institutions and individuals so that admissions offices can reflect the student-centered values of their institutions. If people have questions about that, I'm happy to discuss that at another time because I don't want to take time away from our panelists. And Sigis so kindly reminded me that I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Stacy Kunitz. I am the Director of College Counseling at the Crefeld School, and I serve on the National Admissions Practices Committee, which is why I'm able to come to you with this update today. I am also PACAC's admissions practices chair for a few more hours, and then John Tarrant will be taking the helm, and I'm grateful to him for his service and his expertise. He's a wonderful human, and we are in good hands. Okay, 10:05, we can do this. So I guess my first question for our panelists is, what new and different scenarios have you seen this year? And that could be with regards to CEPP or with regards to COVID-19. Just an overview, kind of what is the strange and wild that you are seeing. We'll start with Chuck Bachman, and then I will call on everybody else.
Sure. Thanks, Stacy. Some of you know, Ellen Dietrich and I do a column in the Pacer every other issue for that talks about different issues we see from the high school and the college side. Look at one issue from both perspectives. So we sort of, back in the fall, post the NACAC conference, we addressed the DOJ implications and everything else, and we were, trying to come up with a catchy title. So do we go with Wild Wild West, which several people had referenced? We ended up dating ourselves a little bit, Changes by David Bowie. And I think, for many of us, that was really, we were anticipating that great unknown. Little did we know that unknown would become the operative term for almost all of our professional lives for this year. And so a lot of that, even back this fall, was all speculative. And then we throw in COVID, and the perfect storm more or less came into play. And I think there was clearly, at least on the part of our institution, that uncertainty also created, pulling off of Christine Dunleavy, anxiety. And how are we going to respond proactively? Basically, cutting to the chase, we did ultimately, towards the 11th hour, modify some of our admission decisions. We did pull back, and this was more COVID focused, on the number of offers we sent to our international students. And we also looked at the number of students, the offers we had for those students who live further away, wondering about distance considerations. And at the 11th hour, we do factor in, we think responsibly, demonstrated interest, but we also, for those students living further away, demonstrated interest became a little bit more of a factor as well, with that unknown of what was our yield going to be like. So at the end, we ended up, admitting a few percentage points higher in terms of our initial offers. Early decision was fairly comparable to where it was in prior years. But we did find, with so many of our programs going virtual, we did go to the wait list earlier this year as a preemptive strike. And so when it was all said and done, our overall admit rate was about 35% this year compared to 28 to 30 where it had been. And I think a lot of schools had sort of anticipated doing that. What we also found as well was the cost sensitivity, the uncertainty, the nervousness. And a lot of folks, had issues with, sure, prior year versus the reality that they were living in now, and really a lot of uncertainty. We also saw we had more than a 3-time increase in the number of merit aid appeals that we've received. Traditionally, we'll offer merit to about 7% to 8% of the overall admit pool when we go out. And we went from last year having about 50 appeals to 161 this year. And we were, be honest, we were a lot more receptive to those appeals than we were in other years as well. Again, it just came down to this great uncertainty. One of the other things that we sort of did in light of the DOJ situation. For those who initially received the merit at the time of their offer of admission, they had until May 1 in order to respond to us. But when we had a number of these appeals come in, and again, in light of the changes in CEPP, and also realizing that enrollment was our primary responsibility here. Some of these students that we awarded merit on appeal, and this is a little questionable, we discussed this a little bit, they still had until May 1 to ultimately decide upon the Lafayette position, their offer. But the offer of, if they wanted the merit part of that, that was usually extended about a week or so turnaround time, which would have been in direct violation of the old SPGP. But I think when you get down to, at the end of the day, for so many of us, it is really, there's a best practice, but there's also what we have to do in terms of our responsibilities with our particular institutions. So right now, our target, we're sitting right at 700 students. Our target was about 720 in a perfect world, but all things considered, we're happy at 700, and we're doing more in terms of anti-yield, anti-melt efforts than we ever have in any other year. So I'm going to stop at this point because I know there's some other folks who want to talk. That's life in Eastern.
Thanks, Chuck. I really appreciate that. And I will just say as AP chair that anything that you are doing to make things better for students doesn't seem to violate the spirit of the CEPP. Tony, do you want to go next? Let's hear what's happening at Penn State. What does your year look like? You can touch on the same things that Chuck has touched on or different things, whatever is relevant for you. You are muted. We have to unmute you.
Yes, I should know that after being in Zoom meetings every day, all day for the last 3-4 months to unmute. And so, yes, thanks for the opportunity. I was hoping I would go a little bit later so I could write down a little bit more notes in terms of and see what folks were sharing, but I will jump right in. And again, thanks so much for the opportunity. Great seeing different faces here and faces that I recognize in the Zoom as well. And as a large public, as we are at Penn State, in terms of what we were originally preparing for with the DOG and the CEPP and the pandemic that came, that happened in March, we were preparing to go as business as usual with the CEPP in terms of that was not going to change anything that we would be doing in admissions, and we were not going to stray from what we've always done in the past. And basically how we were gearing up for that is, again, as Chuck mentioned, the unknown. And so we were prepping in terms of how do we admit students. And again, we're one system with 20 campuses. And how does that affect not only the University Park campus, but our other 19 campuses? So in essence, we were trying to think, how is that going to affect our yield? And again, I've been here for 30 something years. And for the first 25 years, we could predict how many students, how many offers of admission we needed to get our class. And typically for University Park, that class is about anywhere from 8,000 to 8,500. And likewise, that would be the class for our other 19 campuses across the state. And knowing that those that we admit to University Park will affect those that we admit to the campuses is also part of our decision. Meaning the more students we admit and consider for University Park, that will affect the enrollments at the other 19 campuses as we are all one system. So our biggest concern going into CEPP was the yield. And so in terms of if some universities strayed from path and took, as Chuck mentioned, the Wild West approach, how would that affect the yield? Mostly at the campuses is what we were thinking, not so much at the University Park campus. And so we did admit more students to University Park initially and that's always sort of a guessing game in terms of how is that going to affect yield. But other than that, we didn't really stray much at all from DOG and CEPP. The pandemic that came about in March affected a lot of what we do in admissions, and it impacted a lot of what we do and how we. So basically, we were anticipating a large number of deferrals in terms of students who had committed to us, and then students who would opt to wait, play out the pandemic until they were allowed to be in person in classes. And that actually didn't pan out. As of yesterday, our number of deferrals are fairly even to what they were last year. And even after we came out with our announcement on June 15th, that we will have some, we will be in person along with online, and some courses will be as well as remote possibilities. So even with that announcement, we didn't see a large fluctuation of students asking for deferrals as well. And so a couple other things that sort of impacted us was, again, May 1st, and that's historically been a national notification date. And we were being pressed to change that our notification date at Penn State to June 1st. And so what we opted to do was we actually had a button in the students' My Penn State account where they could opt to change it to June 1st. But we did not make that a mass opportunity for folks. So anyone who wanted to change the date from May 1st to June 1st was able to. We just did not do that for everyone. So it had to be requested. And then some other things that we've done as well is, again, we didn't see sort of a mass change to deferments, but we do allow deferments now for a year, but we're doing it by semester. Meaning if a student has accepted the offer of admission and said, yes, they are coming to Penn State, then we will say we can do a deferral for a year, but we're gonna check in with you at the end of the first semester to make sure you're still on board. And we will allow them to take up to 18 credits at another institution. But if they go over 18 credits, they would have to reapply as a transfer students. So we are allowing deferrals, but it's by semester, and we're going to check in with them at the end of this second semester, at the end of the first semester. And again, that's for those who have deposited and said, yes, I'm coming to Penn State. This year, we're also allowing for admit deferrals, which historically we have not really done that. And admit deferrals are those who just have an offer of admission, but have not deposited. And again, so basically we're extending their offer to another date. So for those who are fall admits, we will extend their offer, at least for now, I think until November 1st for the following fall. And then we will check in with those students again in November or December to see, okay, where are you? Are you with us still? Your offer expires November 1st. And if not, then we set them the offer decline. If they're still with us, then they would enroll in the spring semester, and or special cases, we will work with that student moving them forward as well. Some other things in terms of enrollment, I actually read an article today, and I just read it this morning, I believe it was in USA Today, that large publics numbers are increasing because students want to stay home. So in terms of like enrollments for fall, new freshmen, at University Park, we are still open, first of all. And every year at University Park, depending on how students are accepting their offers, some years we may close May 1st. Some years we will stay open. So we are still open. And we are about close to 800 ahead of last year at this point, and gaining as well. System-wide, we are pretty much even with last year. So at University Park, we're as I said, we're up. The campuses are, our other 19 campuses are gaining daily as well. And typically every year the campuses gain from May through the start of classes as well. So that's not unusual for the campuses to continue to gain. And
I'm going to stop you there, I think, just because I'm looking at time. It's so interesting. And I think everything that you're saying sounds like so much extra work too, which I think is probably going to be a theme for everybody. I just want to make sure we get through everybody on this first round. And so we'll definitely get back to you if that's okay.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you. Craig, do you want to go next? I feel like a lot of this stuff, I'm curious to hear the counterpoint, whether Pitt is experiencing some of the same things that Penn State is.
Good morning. Thank you, Stacy. Yes, we are experiencing some of those same things. I think Chuck hit the nail on the head when he said unknown as being sort of an underlying theme for 2020. One of the unknowns is that we quickly recognize that we have no idea how other institutions are reacting to the lessening of the restrictions regarding transfer students. And the reason I say we are no clue really what's going on is because we were informed by a dean in October that her son, who was a freshman at Pitt, had been receiving mail and scholarship offers for the past couple of weeks from another institution. And so it's that old cliche, we don't know what we don't know, because there could be any number of students out there receiving that same type of mail. And so that was a bit of a shock to us, but it sort of galvanized us to make sure that we were all on the same page. And what I mean by we, from the provost level down, that we're not going to alter our approach toward students who are currently enrolled at other institutions. Of course, the other unknown is what's going to happen come August. Like everyone else, we are planning to look toward having face-to-face classes, while at the same time planning to pivot in another direction, because as you look across the nation, you see that there are regions of the country where the number of positive tests are spiraling up. And in our class this year, we have a healthy representation of students who are non-residents. And so we have to be prepared for making changes so that we can ensure that our students, our faculty, our staff are all safe. And so I guess the operative word is pivot. We're ready to pivot in one direction or another, planning to be face-to-face, but recognizing that we may have to move in another direction. One of those directions is, like a number of schools, we also are going to be test optional. And we're looking to explore possibly doing it across the board. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of support, and then there's a lot of unknown and a lot of concern about, well, what does this mean in terms of this? Will this be an increase in volume of applications? Like Chuck said, we just don't know. And we're just going into it feeling optimistic, while at the same time not really knowing it's like getting on a roller coaster you've never been before, going in with our eyes open, trying to feel as though this is exciting and not scary, but it's a bit of both.
That's a great. I want to just ask you one quick follow-up question, which is that if my memory serves me correctly, Pitt has not ever really required recommendations, right? And in fact, has discouraged them. I'm curious, with the new test optional, will you be allowing them or even requiring them, or are you going to keep everything the same for now?
Well, we're going more holistic. And so we're asking and we're encouraging a number of additional pieces of information so that we can offset that. They added to the unknown, not sure how long the application review process is going to take, because we're going to be looking at potentially so much more.
Right. Cool. Thank you so much. All right, Nicole, you're next on my screen, so you're next. How are things over at Washington and Jefferson, and what have you been seeing?
Thank you, Stacy. Good morning, everybody. It's so great to be here and see your faces. I echo, in agreement with Chuck and Craig and Tony about these uncertain times. And at W&J, we have, of course, pivoted just like everyone else. But I think it's been really beneficial to watch others in the field really lead the charge and see what's happening out there. I can tell you that after the changes in CEPP, everyone was very nervous, right? Everyone thought, oh my goodness, what's happening? Will May 1st be under attack? And then COVID hit, and ultimately May 1st was under attack because many schools changed their date to June 1st just naturally. But I can say that at W&J, we knew that our yield game had to be stronger. We knew that we needed to do a little bit more with melt prevention and really focus on that, not just from an enrollment standpoint, from across the entire institution. And so we worked really hard in the fall to inform and ultimately gain the buy-in of the entire campus community. We are pretty small, we're roughly around 1,200 students. And so That's by design, and we're happy to be a smaller institution in Southwestern PA. But with that being said, students expect a certain experience from a small institution, and they're starting to expect it at the point of application, definitely. And we inserted several different strategies in order to increase that yield and ultimately focus on melt prevention. So I can tell you that W&J, we are experiencing a good year, which is great, but we needed to. You know, the 2019 year was less than desirable. Just so everyone knows, I arrived in late 2018. And so, you know, that cycle was somewhat inherited. And some things that we've been doing at W&J is really helping students make the connection with the right people at the right moment, having those honest, transparent conversations regarding pricing. You know, as everyone knows, W&J is a high-priced institution and has been. So being able to speak to what the students are looking for and hoping for out of their experience has been really beneficial throughout this time. In addition to solid recruitment practices and just simply focusing on where the right fit W&J students are, we have been able to enroll students right in our backyard, but also students who are roughly about 130 to 250 miles away. And that's something that's contrary to what everyone's been saying. You know, students from far away don't want to leave home, but W&J hasn't seen that. And hopefully, you know, with melt prevention, we won't see it, but we're 2 months away. And as Craig said, you know, it's sort of unknown. We don't know just yet where we're going to land. We've also increased our underserved populations, which has been a strategic plan initiative of W&J, and we're happy to say that. We have a lot of work to do, but it's important work, and we're happy to say that under these conditions of CEPP changing and COVID-19, we've been able to see the students and their parents still responding well. But I can tell you from, you know, an industry standpoint, I've been a little disappointed, quite honestly. You know, I've been in the enrollment industry for roughly 20 years. And once the changes in CEPP occurred, we at W&J received a lot of inquiries from vendors, and I will call them vendors. You know, historically, I've always been that person to say they're enrollment partners because they're in this with us. But the vendors were the people who were saying, now that changes are occurring in CEPP, you can do whatever you want, and I'm here to help you do whatever you want. Well, my response, you know, to those individuals was, first of all, you don't know Nicole Folcoretto, and let me introduce you. Second of all, you don't know W&J, because we, in our mission, stand for uncommon integrity. And if I choose as a professional representing W&J to do anything but representing something of uncommon integrity, it will be questioned. And our students expect authenticity, and that's something that we're committed to. And so we have to really think about how it's going to impact the students. So a lot of vendors didn't like my response, but I think that these are candid conversations that have to happen.
Yeah. Nicole, I'm going to stop you there just because I want to make sure we keep going, but thank you so much for those remarks. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And you are certainly not the only person who has reported to me that they've been hearing from the vendors. The vendors seem to have been gearing up for it. Mm-hmm. And the minute things were released, they had lots of plans. Ed.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. And I know we are tight on time. So what I'll try to do is just fill in some of the gaps of maybe some things that haven't been discussed. But
oh, and Ed, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but before you begin, I just want to say too that there are some, like for other panelists, if you want to monitor the chat a little bit, there does seem to be some activity there that can be back and forth that way as we're speaking. All right, Ed, you're on. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, no problem. You know, this has obviously been a very strange year, and I really do have to applaud the class of 2020 and what these students have had to go through in their senior year. And the fact that we've asked them to basically deposit without knowing a lot of really pertinent facts that are really going into their decision. I know many of us are finalizing our plans for the fall. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to deliver a quality education in some kind of hybrid format. We are still working out the residential experience and what that's going to be like. And we've asked these students to commit without really having a lot of these facts in their at their disposal when they're making these decisions. So I know for LVC, we lowered our enrollment deposit from 500 to 100. We also moved our deposit deadline to June 1st, and obviously are being extremely flexible with that, even knowing that students are still trying to extend their runway to make this decision. I know some of the questions have been, have you seen more students from the West Coast or further away? We haven't really seen any difference in the type of makeup of the geographic pool. But I will say that our residential right now is higher than it has been, which we thought would possibly change with maybe more students wanting to commute. And then the last thing I just want to point out, because I think that this is going to have a major relevancy moving forward, but about 40% of the students who enroll at LVC are student athletes. And we are cautiously looking at whether or not there will be a fall sports season. And I feel like if there is not, that melt will occur, because even though we are Division III, and it's unlikely that students are going to play professional football or soccer or whatever the fall sport may be, I do feel that students are looking at this as kind of a dual package. They're trying to get the quality education while extending their athletic career. And I feel like you know, we're obviously looking for guidance from the NCAA, but also just looking for guidance from our conference, just in terms of how we're going to be moving forward with that. But that's something clearly that I'm going to be monitoring, because I do feel that will have a major influence on fall enrollment. So I will pause there and turn it back to you, Stacy.
Thank you. I know that one of my nephews plays baseball for Lebanon Valley College, and it's a huge part of his experience and one of the things he loves most. So I can totally see how that would impact kids. Tony, you talked about kids at Penn State, about allowing a 1 semester deferral, or actually, you know, checking in that way, and also being able to take some classes up to 18 credits, I think you said. And I'm curious whether other colleges on the panel are allowing 1 semester deferrals or getting requests for those. And I'm also curious whether you're allowing kids to take, during that deferral, kids to take classes in other places before arriving. So quick responses. I'll start with Chuck.
We're probably seeing more traditional, a few have inquired about 1 semester, but I think the majority are thinking about the more traditional full year. And I think, you know, from what we're seeing traditionally, it'd always be, you know, in a personal enrichment program. Usually if students were in a non-degree seeking program someplace, if they're just taking a couple courses. But I think in light of how bizarro world this entire thing has been, we're a little bit less stringent with that. We're going to be a little bit lax, realizing all bets are off for so much.
Craig, is that the same? Are you guys following suit with Penn State in your policies?
Pretty much. We're looking at things more on an individual basis as far as the defers. Some of the conversations that need to take place is if they have the housing guarantee, which could impact housing opportunities later on. But we're looking at it on an individual basis. And right now, our deferments are trailing just like they were last year, tracking right along those lines. So prepared to pivot when things go in a different direction.
Interesting. And Nicole, are you guys experiencing, what is your deferral policy in terms of semester versus year, and whether you'll allow them to take credits elsewhere?
Yeah, so we're experiencing very similar deferment requests, and we will allow students to defer based on semester or year. And if they choose to take community college courses, we of course will not deny them the opportunity to transfer those courses in, or at least review them for transfer. So we do take things on a case-by-case basis, and it's, once again, it's expected. We're so small. So we're happy to serve this student in the right way.
And Ed?
Yeah, I would echo exactly what Nicole said. We're trying to push students to January to see if they will only take one semester off, but take them on a case-by-case basis and let them take the full year if that's their plan.
I think the message for high school student, for the college, the secondary school side counselors is it never hurts to ask. All right, Tony, back to you. Are you noticing differences? You've talked about your overall yield numbers, but are you noticing differences in the types of kids who are yielding, either geographically or in terms of their need for aid or anything else? Has there been any significant change there?
So part of what we are seeing is we basically have what's called, and we've always had this, but we gave it a name this year, which is Flex Start. And Flex Start basically is for students, again, we're a one system, 20 campuses, but we're allowing students who may have been admitted to a campus further from their home. And for cost reasons, they could, at least for a semester, enroll at a campus closer to their home to save money and or live at home. And then the next year, the following year, they could, again, return to the campus of admission. So we've allowed that for most of the campuses. Again, University Park might be a different story in terms of that. And we've actually seen some out-of-state students partake in that option as well. So we did roll out Flex Start. So, but in terms of students from further field, Texas, California, things like that, we haven't really seen any decline or difference in their enrollment rates at University Park or at our other campuses.
Thank you. And I would say you've answered a lot of the questions that I was asking. Somebody talked about, Chuck was talking about financial aid appeals and merit appeals. Craig, have you been seeing an increase in financial aid requests, in appeals? Has there been more requests for, I mean, Pitt doesn't offer tons of merit scholarship, but has there been more appeal in that way?
No, that's the scary thing. We haven't been getting a lot, and it's almost like there is this conundrum where people are wrestling with issues and they're pretty much holding pat, and we get every now and then you get a request for an appeal of aid, but nothing out of the ordinary from what we've seen in the past. It's the pool is behaving pretty much like it has in the past, which is to some extent a little unnerving.
Right, because who knows when it's going to fall off the cliff. Ginny asked a great question in the chat, and a couple of you talked about stepping up your efforts to prevent melt. Can you talk a little bit about what kinds of things that you're doing? This one can go to anyone. So Nicole answered in the chat. Ed, do you want to talk a little, and then maybe Chuck?
Yeah, right now we are up in our melt. So we've lost more students this year than any of the last 5 years, but the reasons that we're losing them are just students wanting to be closer to home, and they're very legitimate reasons that are very connected to COVID-19. So, but in terms of a strategy, I know that we've worked very closely with our marketing department and our academic affairs department and our student affairs, and we've built a communication plan to where we're just sending a lot more communication to students. I think that's the key for us, is they just want to know what information you have at that time. It does change from week to week and even day to day. I never thought in my admissions career that I'd spend so much time watching the governor's press conference each day and each week, just to you know, we're the only county now in the Commonwealth that is still yellow. So I'm a little baffled by that, but that obviously goes into this whole bigger picture of what the fall is going to look like and the melt, and will students want to go to a school that is in the yellow versus a school that's in the green? And these are things I never thought I'd be talking about in admissions, but that's the reality that we're in right now.
Yeah. And Chuck, what about you?
Our melt is actually less than it has been in other years. So again, go figure, so we've done a lot more working very collaboratively with the other offices on campus and really partnering with them in terms of everything from class registrations, health forms, housing surveys, and all of that. And we've been communicating things much earlier. We've worked more with our parents program to reach out to parents sooner in this process. We really found that we were being sort of criticized by the number and judged based on the number of inquiry phone calls we have, because we all take turns answering the phone now remotely. So that's been eye-opening. Never in my career did I think I'd be the answering man on the front line of the phones, Ed. But I think we really taught us that everything from when will students be arriving. Parents just had a lot of questions. I think we dropped the ball a little bit early on in being, we're still formulating our own policy, but we could have, I think, communicated a little bit better with some folks. But I mean, we're reaching out to kids from our territories like every other week. We're doing an online Zumba class for the entering first years. We're doing an open mic. We're doing some things with our upperclassmen, trivia, virtual trivia. Just so much to try to, connect them with the folks coming in. And now more and more the ball is starting to roll. But I think it's going to be we're monitoring who hasn't submitted all those forms that we're requiring yet. I think we're going to be looking more closely in a timely fashion on final transcripts than we ever have before, to try to avoid and identify where any of that melt might be, certainly as soon as possible.
It sounds like, from what I'm hearing from you and from everybody, that everyone in your offices are working harder probably than they've ever worked before. It sounds like increased responsibility in terms of reaching out in communications. And I'm curious, as leaders in your offices, how are you working to try to take care of your staff and make sure that they are okay and not burning out doing all of this, what seems like extra work? Craig, would you like to start on that one? Or, how are you guys working on that?
Well, it's a challenge because everyone from senior staff on down to everyone in the office, we're on a number of calls. We're seeing a lot of each other sharing information when a lot of it would have been passed just as you walk past in the hallway. And so having 4, 5, 6 Zoom calls a day has been exhausting at times. And so there are times in which our vice provost will tell people, look, disconnect, unplug for a while, try to recharge. We've done some virtual retreats in which we've actually talked about these things. And ironically, we found that there are some people who find that they're more productive at home because they have it's quieter. Obviously, they don't have children or pets because they say it's quieter, they can do a lot more. And I'm here with the dog and my grandchild, and it was chaos. I was begging for things, the daycare to open and for my dog to run away at one point. It was just that crazy. But she didn't, by the way. But I think that we all have to find a way to work in this new normal because we're going to be in this situation for a while.
Yeah. Tony, you're unmuted. So would you like to go next?
So I would say in terms of, I think what we found is that folks have been very good at working remotely, and I think more efficiently than we've ever thought. So I think it's going to be harder to get the toothpaste back into the tube, and that folks have had a taste of that. And I think there are a majority who think, now I can do this at home all the time after pandemic is over. And so, I think that's sort of a direction we're moving. And in terms of all the other things that we've done and initiated because of the pandemic, a lot of virtual events where I think the silver lining has been, typically, again, we have sort of an audience that we reach, and we've been able to expand that audience and do things nationally as opposed to regionally because folks don't have to be on campus. So I'm trying to look at the silver lining in terms of things that we've done, things that we're doing, and I don't see a lot of virtual things going away because I think in many events they've been somewhat successful. So I think in the future, at least what my opinion is that you'll see some hybrid of high school visits, for example. Again, we're not sure if we'll be doing high school visits this fall, or we're not sure if we're going to have visitors on campus this fall. But I think virtual in many ways is here to stay. And I think we're going to see in some sense of a hybrid of all of that because of the pandemic.
Thank you. It is 10:45, my friends. I wish that we had more time. I feel like we only barely scratched the surface here, and I really wish I could have heard more from everybody. But time is time. I do want to say one closing thing about May 1st, because that came up a few times, and I just want to make sure that people understand that, the rule is that you're not supposed to have deadlines that are prior to May 1st. It's always been okay to have later deadlines than that. And I think that the fact that that so many of you have been extending deadlines and helping kids has been really amazing. And I really appreciate that. It feels like everyone is trying to go above and beyond, both in terms of their support of kids and their ethics. So thank you everybody for this amazing panel. And moderators or panelists, if you wouldn't mind staying back for a few moments, I just would like to say a couple of words. But everybody else, thank you so much, and wish we could continue. It's going to take a minute to get everybody out of the room. And this is the part where we get to see who wasn't actually listening and they just linger on. But we'll remove those people at the end if we need to.
And I'm just going to linger anyway and say great job. Thank you for the panel.
Wonderful job.
And Stacy, nice job moderating.
Thanks. It's so hard because I keep wanting to be like, oh wait, Nicole hasn't talked enough. Oh wait, Ed hasn't talked enough. Oh wait, Tony hasn't talked enough. Wait, no, Craig hasn't. No, Chuck hasn't. Like,
great panel.
I wanted to hear more from everybody. So that was really, that was definitely hard. All right, I'm going to remove that last person. Great. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you. And Tony, it's nice to meet you. Like, we've never actually met. And so thank you so much for jumping in. And
I've been around for over 30 something years. So
well, I'm sure a not meeting is definitely wild. But and I know Nicole and I have only met online at this point and whatever. So, but I thank you. It was really great. And I'm sorry that we didn't have time for each of you to speak. I could have listened to each of you speak for the entire 45 minutes, honestly. You're all so knowledgeable.
Thank you, Stacey,
and
for putting it all together and keeping us on course. Thank you, Stacy.
Sorry if I was heavy-handed there. I just was like, oh my God, 10:40. I was like watching the clock the whole time. But
yeah, you did great, Stacy. And there were a lot of people on. I was looking to see the number of viewers, and at one point, it was approaching 100. So that was great. Yeah. I think you did an awesome job just preparing the topic and the panel. And I'm so grateful to be among all of you.
Thanks. And honestly, I feel like this is one of those things we could do again, that like this, it makes a lot of sense to do a panel like this at PACAC where we're hearing from enrollment leaders. So, so thank you to everybody. All right, I'll let you go so that you can have your next thing. We'll see you. I think Accept is next, right? Is that what's happening next? Good, at 11:30. So I'm excited for that. Hopefully I'll see you all there.
Any of you do or do not know Marie Bingham? I've known Marie for many, many years. She, if you look up spark plug in the dictionary, you will find her picture. Dictionary, how's that for an old word? But considering the experience here, I guess that's an okay word for this group. So
yes, I think we're all a little, well, long in the tooth is a little extreme, but we all have some experience.
Well, Craig and Nicole, it's a pleasure to meet you folks. Tony, I haven't seen you since, if you recall, O'Hare. Tony and I bumped into each other at O'Hare this fall.
Nice.
And Ed, always a pleasure. So
Yep. Have a great day, everyone. See you in about 40 minutes.
Take care. And Del,
See you later.
thanks again for hosting us.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
I enjoyed it. Excellent. I learned a lot myself. Thank you.